Today's date, the 22nd of November 2014. Welcome to Axiom Curb Radio. Tonight we've got Albert Burgess from the English Constitution Group returning to give us an update. So we're going to join Albert now. Hello Albert, how are you? Can you hear me alright?
Hello there.
Hello Albert.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. And yourself?
No, I'm alright. I'm alright. How's your knee, Albert? It's a lot better than it was. Jolly good. I'm glad to hear it.
Are you suffering from a lot of swelling or all like that?
It is a bit swollen, yeah.
Have you got any tuber grips around it to stop swelling?
No, I just put it up in the air for an hour or so every now and again and it goes down again.
Oh, just keeping it elevated, that's good.
This is the worst spot, PJ.
Yeah, he's got a little an exclamation mark. His signal's not very good. Oh wait. No, he says bot can't experience group video calling because their device doesn't support it.
He said he's still there now.
Yeah, he's still here. Yeah. It's because Albert's got his webcam going, and he's just notified us that Bot's not able to participate in a webcam chat.
Oh, I see. No worries. Hey Albert, how you doing?
I'm alright. I'm going to cut my webcam off anyway.
Cool.
How's that? That's it. That's for it. Good. Good. Yeah, excellent. Any news, Albert? What with the ECG? Yeah. Well, not a great deal at the moment because I've sort of been out of circulation for a bit. But we are getting results in other fields. I've had a lady who had her children. You know about child stealing by the state. Yeah. I had a lady who had 4 of her children taken off of her. One of whom was sent to prison at 70. He's 17 now. He was sent to prison when he was 15, given 5 times 5-year sentences on a stitched-up case by the police. So I've been helping the parents with that one, and actually I've managed to get the police to look at the case again by writing to the chief constable and telling him that, you know, I was a retired police officer, I've looked at the case files, I don't like what I was reading. It's patently obvious to me that there was a move on the part of the detectives on the instructions of a consultant paediatrician that the 15-year-old boy had to be in prison. They couldn't deal with him if he wasn't in prison. Basically, he said the consultant paediatrician told the police that she couldn't deal with the boy unless he was in prison. From that minute, it's patently obvious that the police set out to put him in prison. Yeah. I just got a letter yesterday, started complaining about this, I think in June, end of June, early July. Got a letter yesterday. The case has been reviewed about 4 or 5 times by different officers. Now they've added another police officer to it, and they are now conducting a full inquiry into the case overseen by the IPCC. So it looks as though the police themselves are making it a criminal issue, because what I'd alleged was that the doctor and the 2 detectives in the case, in fact there were 3 but I didn't know that, but the police have found the other one and added him to it. The doctor and the 2 detectives in the case were guilty of a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and that because a 4-year-old child died in foster care, he was seen by his father at an arranged visit, and he was very ill. So he said they had to take him straight to the hospital. They didn't. They took him home, fed him cow for 4 days, and he died. And the police are now investigating that with a review at my request to investigating the foster parents and the social worker for manslaughter by gross neglect. So that's all being done now under the auspices of the IPCC inquiry. So that's the result, which is going on. The other thing is, I don't know if I've mentioned it, do you know what a denizen is?
Yeah, you were saying it's a non...
Right, well...
Yeah, who gets put into the House of Lords, basically.
Yeah.
Becomes a peer, shall we say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's not that he becomes a peer. A denizen is a naturalised subject who is halfway between a natural-born subject of the King's and an alien. And as such, he gets certain rights of being in this country. He can buy and sell property. He can leave and inherit property. What he can't do is he can't be given any order of nobility.
That's it.
Nor, in fact, can he can't be given any order of nobility. He can't sit in either House of Parliament, nor can he sit on the Privy Council, nor is he entitled to hold any public office. Now, if we can enforce that, we empty both Houses of Parliament, every bloody town hall in the country.
Is this what part of the legal documentation can you?
It comes under the prerogatives of the King, and English law forbids the King ever, and it can't be changed by English law. It forbids the King the right to change it, to make anybody, give any denizen, any naturalised subject, it forbids the King the right to make them a member of either House of Parliament, to give them a peerage or a knighthood, or in fact to allow them to hold any public office.
Right.
So that's quite an exciting point, don't you think?
I think so.
Because if we can do that, we get our country back, because it means that only people indigenous to these islands can work in your in a public office in your local council. Only natural-born subjects can sit in Parliament. Only natural-born subjects can be given peerages and knighthoods, and it clears the whole bloody system out and gives it straight back to the indigenous people of these islands.
You know they're going to pull out the bag, though, to fight that with, Albert.
Well, they can pull out whatever they like. The fact is, it is the law of England. It is the way that it's written. It's fully consistent with the terms of the Bill of Rights of 1689 and the oath in the 1559 Act of Supremacy, which forbids any foreign prince, person, prelate, state or potentate, any jurisdiction, power, superiority, supremacy or authority, ecclesiastical and spiritual, in this land. So why would you ban all those people who are living overseas from having any say, and allow them to come here, get naturalised, and then give them a say anyway? So it means, for example, that all those Muslims currently sat in the House of Lords and in Parliament are kicked out, and they lose all their peerages and everything else.
So, if that would be the case, who would these Muslim, cultures have to represent them?
What?
Who would they have to represent them?
Represent who?
Because it's a multicultural country now.
No, that's bullshit. It's a country. It's our country where we let other people come in. So it's our country. As long as they comply with our laws and our way of living, then that's fine. But for starters, the Muslims are not doing that. And all this bloody nonsense about, oh, it's a multicultural country. They don't want multicultural. If you have Indians living in your area, you will find that all of the Indians congregate together and they don't actually mix with us. Muslims definitely don't mix with us, and in fact Muslims actually attack us physically. You know, so you know, all this, you know, it's a multicultural country. That is bollocks. It's not. It's a them and us country. Now, some foreign people who come here are good. For example, Hindus don't normally break the law, and if they do break the law, it's normally white-collar crime when they fiddle the tax that they owe the Inland Revenue over their little corner shop they're running. But then, hey, who doesn't fiddle tax to the Inland Revenue? That's, you know, you have to do that, don't you? Otherwise, you're not doing the job you're there for, which is to keep yourself above out of drowning. So if you look at Sikhs are very hard working. The Gurkhas that are over here, very quiet, get on with their lives, don't interfere with us. The Chinese, to a certain extent, do the same, although in parts of London you've got the Chinese mafia operating, the Tongs and that. But I mean, it's all this multicultural stuff, it's a nonsense. It's a nonsense. It's not that we don't say we don't welcome foreign people. We, generally speaking, the English, generally speaking, do and always have welcomed foreign people. It's the foreign people don't welcome us. And if you take Islam, for example, Islam doesn't want, not only does it not want to integrate with us, it actually wants to subdue us into becoming Islamic.
Or so they say.
Well, I think sort of like Carol Albert's point about multiculturalism, and he has got a good point. If you take some cities, they're literally divided down the middle. I mean, Bradford is a good example, is it not?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, but if you look at the actual physical evidence to what Albert is putting over, there's quite a lot of evidence there to back up what Albert's saying. But, you know, so there's that side of that. But on the Denizen point that he's making, of course, you know, they abide English law. I mean, when you go to Rome, there's Rome. That's always been known. Wherever you go, really. You'd be foolish to ignore that, wouldn't you, for your own persuasion? But, you know, it's not like there's any sort of racist thing going on here, because, I mean, they can live as well as anybody else in England, and if they are good entrepreneurs, as what people say, you know, whatever, even if it's fiddling taxes, which is apparently meant to be your duty now by the sounds of it.
And you know, I don't think anybody has a specific right to a culture. They just have a right to a religion, that's all.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you come change the country.
No.
Well, if you come to England, then we welcome, by and large, we welcome people to come to this country. But we do expect them to try and integrate into our way of doing things and into our way of life. We don't expect them to start demanding that we change our laws to suit them. And I should think that that is the same in just about every other country. And if you take Islam, there are major riots all over Europe because of Islam and what they're doing. Parts of France, Paris, France, they are taking over major through routes, and just thousands upon thousands of them are just putting their prayer mats out 5 times a day and just stopping all the traffic on major routes. Well, you know, I mean, frankly, if I was in charge of France, I would clear the street, even if it meant I had to put 4 flail tanks in a line and send 4 flail tanks down the street and you know, beat the shite out of them with chains. But they certainly would not start to take over my major city and actually dictate what was going to happen in it.
But don't pedestrians have more of a right of way than any vehicle on a road?
Well, no, you don't. You can't just sit down in the middle of the road and actually start praying, because what you're doing then in this country, I don't know about in France, but certainly in this country, that's known as willful obstruction of the highway, and it carries a power of arrest.
Yeah, it's the same over here, obstruction of the highway, it's same over here, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would think so.
But based on the fact of, you know, if someone were crossing the road, then you'd expect the vehicle to stop and give way.
Well, that depends, doesn't it? Because if you're crossing the road at a recognised crossing point, like an automatic traffic signal, you can't just walk out in the road just because you feel like walking out in the road. If the traffic signal is actually saying to the car, you can go, then that is also saying to you, you can't go. So, you know, otherwise people would be getting run over left, right and bloody centre, wouldn't they? So, you know, when you've got signals like that, it's just like pedestrian crossing. Pedestrians have an absolute right of way on a pedestrian crossing. However, if you suddenly flew down the road on a skateboard or on a bicycle and suddenly shot out into a pedestrian crossing, you can't possibly expect the driver of a car to be able to stop before you run you over. You know, and all these things have to have a degree of common sense in them.
Well, you know, I didn't expect to witness a blind person crossing a busy street, but he did it. He achieved it. And all cars that saw him trying to cross all stopped and let him cross.
Well, of course they will. You know, unless you're a complete and utter moron, if somebody is blind or old or a young child, even an animal, if somebody like that is in front of you, then you are going to stop and let them go. But I mean, that doesn't mean that you have an automatic right just to gallop off into the road.
I think that with anything, there's got to be a certain amount of common sense going on here from not only the traffic users, but from the pedestrians. It should be an equal thing.
Yeah, of course. It's like anything, you know. If it's two opposing things, then it's best to work together, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of that has been lost in all sorts of society today.
Well, there is not a lot of common sense left in sections of society today. You know, I mean, if you take the free men on the land and what they're doing all the time, they're always getting arrested and sent to prison. You know, because they've got this skewed idea of what the law actually is, and it is a seriously skewed idea. And when the law comes up and bites them, then they start talking about corrupt courts and corrupt police officers. But it's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with the fact that their initial idea of what the law is completely, totally and utterly a figment of somebody's imagination.
I think the reason why they've come along, to be fair to them, and I'm all for anybody standing up for what they deem as their rights. If you're dealing with fairness and self-defence, because I mean you've got to be so careful now. If somebody's going to come up and bash you, and I don't care whether they're in a uniform or not, Albert, you're entitled to defend yourself, okay?
Yeah, but you see, the number of times that police officers bat people is relatively low when you consider the amount of people.
I wasn't actually, to be fair, I wasn't actually going to suggest the police. I'm talking about these people that don't have authority, like G4S and security guards and private security guards.
Oh yeah.
So council enforcement officers, you know, it's not the police. To be honest, the police are becoming the minority involved with these types of actions because the
well, they are, but then you see, what you have to blame is you have to blame the House of Commons, because the House of Commons is where the laws start. And you know, when you work out the fact that the House of Commons is where the working man's representative should be, and in fact, if you look at the House of Commons, I just think you've got one member of Parliament, and that's the beast of Bolsover, who's actually representing the working man. The rest of them are representing themselves on how the hell they can get as rich as they can, as quick as they can. And they don't give a monkey's uncle about you. So they're giving all these things, authorities to anybody and everybody to do it. It's the House of Commons, through the government and the House of Commons, which is selling off the family silver. They've sold the water, the electric, they've sold the gas, they've sold just about everything they can sell. They've even, I believe, sold bloody Dover to the French. You know, how can you sell Dover to the French, for Christ's sake?
The White Cliffs are now French. The White Cliffs of Dover are now French.
You know, I mean, it's just ridiculous. But you see, there's such a lot of crap on the internet about the Queen and about the House of Lords and all the rest of it. And realistically, the Queen and the House of Lords are on our side. They are on the side of the working man. And they've always been on the side of the working man. But the House of Commons, who are supposed to represent the working man, they're the ones who actually are harming the working man at any and every opportunity they can get.
That's because they got power of legislation, isn't it?
Well, it's because you can't trust the working man with authority. It goes to his head. He sees the opportunity to make himself rich. Look, you take John Prescott. John Prescott has spent the last 30 years as a Member of Parliament actually saying that we've got to close the House of Lords. And yet the minute he gets offered a peerage, he grabs it so fucking fast, he was quicker at grabbing his peerage than a ferret goes down a fucking rabbit hole.
Well, he didn't win all the time. He didn't get police commissioner's job, did he?
Well, no, he didn't. But then, you know, not everybody is going to be so stupid all the time. But I mean, it's the fact is he's trying it. So he's going to get his £300 a day for going to the House of Lords, which they never used to get, you know. The actual hereditary peers never used to get £300 a day. They used to get their bloody bus fare. But that was it. They got their out-of-pocket expenses met. Yeah, and that is reasonable. They didn't get paid £300 a day. So John Prescott, he's got a pension as a Member of Parliament. He's getting his old age pension. He's getting £300 a day for the House of Lords. Plus, he wants to get paid as a police commissioner at something like £80,000 a year. You know, it's all about money.
It's not like these hereditary peers need £300 a day, is it?
No, no. The hereditary peers are very much on our side. And I went to a meeting on the River Thames, and there was an earl there. Now, if you saw this earl, he was fairly tall, ramrod, straight-backed, but 84, and he was complaining bitterly that he'd been thrown out the House of Lords, because when he first started work, he worked for the Foreign Office. And when he worked for the Foreign Office, if they sent him from London to deliver some papers up to Liverpool, he was expected to pay his own train fare to and from Liverpool, if he stayed overnight, his own accommodation in Liverpool, out of his ordinary wages. He got no expenses. When he inherited the title at 25, he gave that up, and he went full-time into the House of Lords, where all he got was his out-of-pocket expenses met for going to and from the House of Lords. He then spent from the age of 25 until he was thrown out of the House of Lords in 1999, or 1999 when he was thrown out of the House of Lords, going to the House of Lords just about every day of his working life, scrutinising legislation and chucking out bad legislation that was bad for us as working people. And he said that all he wanted to do was to go and sit in the House of Lords and carry out his constitutional function, which was to scrutinise legislation and be an advisor to the Queen. And he didn't want paying for it. He did not want paying. Now, he was there in a full frock coat with a white shirt with a bow tie, you know, full frock coat, and he had decorations going from his shoulders to his knees on both sides of his frock coat. And he was a guy who's a hereditary peer, he's an earl, which means he's a very high-ranking hereditary peer, and all he wants to do is serve the working man, like he has spent his entire life serving the working man. But they chuck him out, and what do they put in? They put in a load of toadies to the political parties, who are only there because of money they pay to the political parties. So they've got into the House of Lords through corruption, they stay in the House of Lords through corruption, and all the rest of it. And have you heard the latest? What they're going to do now is when a hereditary peer leaves the House of Lords, because they're talking about they can only do so long in the House of Lords, not a hereditary peer, a life peer, when they leave the House of Lords, because they're talking about making it a 15-year job. So after 15 years in the House of Lords they leave, and then their peerage will automatically become a hereditary peerage. So not only have we got to put up with a twat for the 15 years that we got him, but we've also got to put up with a twat for the rest of time. And his family for the rest of the time.
They're just lying in their own nest, aren't they, all the time?
All they are doing, but it is not. It is not the Queen, and it is not the thing. I mean, for example, there's an awful lot of stuff on the internet today, on Facebook, I've noticed, about the Queen and the fact that she gets, they said 35 million, but it's not, it's 40 million pounds in the civil list. And how she's robbing us so that she can be Queen. Well, that's pure, utter, total nonsense. When the Queen was crowned, she did what every other King and Queen of England has done since George III, which was she gave the profits of the Crown estates to the Exchequer, and out of those profits they pay her back the civil list. Now, over the last couple of years, the profits from the Crown estate have been £200 million a year, of which they pay her back £40 million, leaving the taxpayer a clear gift from the Queen of £160 million every year. When the banks went tits up, it wasn't widely publicised, but the Queen actually wrote a personal cheque for £6 million, which she gave to Gordon Brown to pay to the Exchequer to help the country out. A personal cheque, £6 million. How many of these multi-millionaires currently sitting in the House of Lords as life peers actually wrote a cheque for anything at all to help the country out?
How many people sell gold when it's at its lowest rate?
Right, well that's right. Gordon Brown sold our gold when it was at a low price, and the very next week it went high again. Because Gordon Brown, they deliberately lowered the price to sell it, then it was put back up again. You're not telling me that Gordon Brown hasn't got an offshore account somewhere with an awful lot of fucking money in it that none of us know about? You know, it's a racing certainty that Tony Blair has, and even bloody, what's his name, Farage has got an offshore bank account where he's sorting money away, he's squirreling money away into an offshore bank account that nobody knows about how much he's got in it.
Well, he wasn't our CEO of a hedge fund.
Well, yes, he was, but you see, the point is, it's all dishonest, isn't it?
Well,
You know,
it's absolutely more than dishonest, it's criminal.
well, absolutely, it's criminal. But you see, the point is, you know, I tell people that you only have one option. When it comes to voting today, you've only got one option. You've got to vote for UKIP. I tell them that. But I cannot abide Farage, because Farage is only in UKIP because it suits Farage to be in UKIP. If Cameron offered him a safe seat to change over and go as a Tory MP in a safe seat, and then a minister's job with a minister's pay, Farage would be out of UKIP and into the Tory party at the click of a thumb.
I don't think Farage can deal with stress.
You what?
I don't think he can deal with stress very well. And that's...
I think Farage doesn't deal with anything very well. He is a dictator in UKIP. He is arrogant and is a bully, and he's doing all sorts of stuff in UKIP that he shouldn't be doing, and which you factor against UKIP policy.
What was the name of the chap who came out? He actually ran to be the leader of UKIP, but they chucked him out. But I've read a couple of his websites, they're quite old and exposing the EU. I can't remember his name.
I know it's an oil tank.
You know what I mean though, Albert, don't you?
Yeah.
And he was saying that, you know, the deals have been done, there's a lot of selling off of especially the southern part of the country, to, is it something Monge or something they call it, I don't know, they give
Yeah, well, this is what I'm saying, that the government are selling off the family silver. Anything and everything they can sell, they are selling it. And we need to take this country back, and we need to say to all these foreign owners or everything here, well, we're very sorry, but it was illegal to sell it, so it's not yours, it's ours, and we're taking it back. You know what I mean? And when they say, well, you know, you've got to buy it back because it costs so much money to buy it back, I say, no, we don't. You bought it illegally. You know, if you want to go to jail for a conspiracy to commit fraud on the English taxpayer, you insist on getting some money back, because we will get an international warrant out for you, and you can come here and we'll send you to jail for a conspiracy to commit fraud on the taxpayer. So, you know, I mean, there are ways of doing it. I mean, the Royal Navy have got a wonderful system. If, for example, say they buy an engine, say a Perkins diesel engine, for example, they then get a copy of the Perkins workshop manual. They then reprint that workshop manual, and they call it a book of reference. It's a BR, it's given a Royal Naval number. And that then is issued to everyone who's got a Perkins engine of that make. When Perkins find out about it, and they say, oh, hang on a minute, you're using our book, word for word, you're using our book, the Royal Navy say, how did you get hold of this book? This is covered under the Official Secrets Act. Go away or we'll prosecute you.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be doing with these foreign businesses. Go away or go to jail, one or the other.
So what would be the actions? Let's just say this time in the spring, next spring or May, whenever this general election business goes on, just say UKIP get enough seats to be the second biggest. That's quite possible from these by-elections and what people are saying. I don't know. I don't believe that half of it. I don't believe in polls and all the rest of it.
Well, they reckon that between now that what's his name's won Rochester.
Yeah.
They were saying that between 2 and 6 Tory MPs are going to walk across the road and join UKIP.
Right. Do you think this is a? I mean, I'm not really into politics, but a lot of people say, well, this is a right-wing Tory conspiracy between.
Well, what could happen here is if enough members of Parliament leave the Tory party and join UKIP, then in fact it could remove the Tory party's very slender majority in the House. so that they can't anymore, so they're not anymore able to govern, and we then have to have an election. You know, and that way we don't have to wait until the election is due, because they're simply not able to put anything through Parliament, so they have to go. And I also think that if there's talk, isn't there, about having a vote of no confidence in Cameron and getting rid of him and getting a new leader for the Tory party. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is it's up in the air all the time, isn't it?
I mean, I've never seen such a. I mean, not that I think that everything's legit. It doesn't seem to be that way. But what a complete mess. If you want to look at politically, parties, obviously a lot of people say, well, there's a real agenda beyond that whole shebang. Well, that's a deeper thought process. But what a mess. What a mess. And I don't think you could be right. I mean, what's your gut feeling? Early election, these rebels go over to UKIP and we...
Well, I think if enough members of Parliament defect to UKIP from the Tory, the Labour and the Liberal Party, and I think the only reason they will defect is because they can see the writing on the wall and they're looking after their own jobs. You know, they want to stay in the House of Commons, and they know full well that a major election, if they run for their own party, then they're going to get defeated. On the other hand, UKIP's on an upward swing at the moment, so if they resign, force a by-election, and actually run for UKIP, then in fact they're likely to get elected in again. And once they're elected as a UKIP one, the chances are the next election they'll be re-elected. And the other thing that you could do, of course, is simply not resign and simply say, well, I was elected as a member of Parliament, so I'm going to stay for the rest of the time, but I'm going to move across the floor to UKIP. So, you know, UKIP, from having 2 members of Parliament, could suddenly, this time next week, have 8 members of Parliament. And then that gives them an awful lot more clout, doesn't it?
It does.
You know, and then the more noise UKIP make in Parliament, then in point of fact, the more members of Parliament are likely to think, hold on, the writing on the wall here says that you know, we are going to be voted out if we don't change, and then more members of Parliament are likely to walk across the floor. And I think that Farage is looking forward to that, and I think the country is looking forward to that. I think the danger of that is that we end up with the same group of MPs that have been robbing us blind for the last God knows how many years, now in Parliament, robbing us blind but wearing a different hat.
That's the whole irony of it all, isn't it? You know, they've got a different colour vest on. They've got a different colour vest on. That's all. And who's really inhibited? Who's going to be, you know, who's going to end up being, you know, on the end of the bloody boot again, you know?
Well, it's always the working man, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's always the working man. And this is the point.
Well, the other thing is, Albert, what you just said, and I thought about this the other day, what more proof do you need, just the working man in the street, to have no faith at all in the political system, when a guy comes out and says, I'm going to go to the other side because I'll still be in Parliament, only thinking of himself? I mean, what more proof do you need?
Well, you don't need any more proof than that, do you?
Not really.
You don't need any more proof than that, you know? You really, really do not. And of course the irony would be, if Cameron was voted out as Prime Minister in the Tory party, you know, and Farage said to him, well, why don't you come across to us, Mr Cameron, because we'll give you a nice job, you know, in our party. I wouldn't be surprised to find that Cameron doesn't walk across the floor either, because they're all in it for what they can get out of it. There's not one of them in the Commons at the moment who's interested in what's good for you and me.
No.
Not one of them.
Apart from Mr Skinner, I think you said earlier, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, the beast of Bolsover, yeah, who has been consistently representing the people who elect him, and they've elected him consistently because he represents them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter which government he's in. He's a Labour Member of Parliament. But if you heard Mr Skinner having a go at the Prime Minister at question time when you've got a Labour government, he is no less bloody vitriolic and cutting with a Labour Prime Minister than he is with a Tory Prime Minister. You know, he's there representing his people. I would make Skinner bloody Prime Minister, frankly, because Skinner is the only one, as far as I can see, who has never ever fiddled his expenses. I don't think you'll ever find anything about Skinner that's not 100% straight up. He's never fiddled his expenses, and he has always done what he promised to do to the people who elect him, which is to represent their views in Parliament. And he has consistently and totally done that for the last God knows how many years he's been in Parliament. But I seem to remember him being there most of my bloody life.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, because, I don't think he's ever been in a cabinet or a shadow cabinet, has he?
No, he never has.
Because he's not a yes man, is he?
No, he's not. He absolutely isn't a yes man. And you know, unless you're a yes man, you don't get on, do you?
There's nothing more undemocratic than a party whip, is there? I mean, that pretty much sums party.
Well, it's illegal. It's illegal. The Bill of Rights of 1689 says that all votes have to be free. Now, how can you have a free vote if you've got somebody telling you how to vote? You know, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I think a lot of the problems is, I mean, knowing one thing and and doing something about it is another thing. I know, especially in the dealings with Westminster, as we should put it. Somebody else puts it. I think the lack of the education to the man in the street about how it should be.
Well, let's be fair about it. You've got all these people in there, Cameron, Craig, Miliband, they've all got bloody good university degrees, and there's not one of them knows fuck all about fuck all. You are better off if you went down the East End of London and formed a government out of Cockney orange sellers, then you'd be better off. You'd get a better government out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. Yeah, definitely.
You know, I mean, because at least the Cockney orange sellers, they are, you know, I mean, they're down to earth people, and they're basically honest. They're a bloody sight more honest than not honest. And, you know, alright, so, you know, they're going to fiddle their income tax, but who doesn't, as I said? You know, if you can avoid paying a few quid in income tax, well, that's fine, you know, because they're overtaxing you any bloody way. So, you know, if you can manage to fiddle a bit of it so you don't have to pay it, it's good. That, you know, everybody accepts that's going to happen. But what we don't expect is that people are going to actually deliberately, you know, whatever. I mean, that guy that was forced to resign the other week, Member of Parliament, was forced to resign because he was a Labour guy and he was in a pub fight, wasn't he? He was in a fight in the bar. And he whacked another Member of Parliament. I can't think of his name. So he was forced to resign. They withdrew the whip from him, then he was forced to resign. His last year's expenses claim was £183,000 in expenses. How can you possibly justify that?
You can't.
You can't. But what he bought with those expenses, he bought Apple Mac laptops, Apple Mac mainframe computers, you know, the proper PCs, all Apple Macs, all top of the range, and he's taken them home. He's taken them home. They're bought with taxpayers' money in order to facilitate him doing a job for a taxpayer. And yet when he resigns, they're no longer the property of the taxpayer. Bollocks for that. They should stay there and be reissued to somebody else who wants to do that.
Yeah. Well, with the politicians, we know they're all in it for themselves. You know, that goes without saying. But don't we have partially to blame powerful banks and the lobbying and all that. Well, they don't need to lobby.
Well, of course we do. Of course we do.
You know, the whole financial system.
And this is down to William III, isn't it? Because William III allowed the Rothschilds and people like that, the Ashkenazi bankers, to open the Bank of England, and then he borrowed money off the Bank of England, for which they charged him interest. And we've been paying the Bank of England, i.e. the Rothschilds and the others, interest ever since. But then you see, if you take the idea about the Denizens, well, there is a Lord Rothschild, isn't there?
Yes.
Well, he wouldn't be. He can't be because he's an immigrant to this country. He's not natural to this country.
But what was he? When you say Denizen, if someone's born here, but they have parentage from another country, are
they are alien.
Right. So you're talking about, are we going to the Anglo-Saxon type of thing to be a natural, or?
Well, you've got to be able to trace your ancestry back sufficiently far, and I would say, 500 or so years, in order to qualify as being English. Now, most of us can do that if we put our minds to it. I mean, my sister did my family tree back, and she took it back 500 years. And then she didn't take it any further because, frankly, it was too much trouble because you're then looking at church records all over the place. But I do know that my surname, the first mention of my surname, occurs in the reign of Henry II, which was 800 years ago, that I've been able to find. So you can say, well, I'm English because my surname is English and I go back 800 years on the father's side. Otherwise I wouldn't have the same surname. But you see, what the rule is if you're an English man and you go overseas and you marry an alien woman and you have children overseas, your children are English. If you are an English woman and you go overseas and you marry an alien man and you have children, your children are alien. And so you take the nationality of the father. Now I know that's highly inconvenient for a lot of people, but you take the nationality of the father. So all of these white girls over here who have gone off and married West Indians and Africans and Indians and whatever, in fact, their children are not English, they're actually the nationality, whatever nationality the father was.
Right. I mean, it's difficult to trace your family tree to a certain point. I think the longest, most people stop at the census line, don't they? When was the first census issue?
Well, that would have been round about Queen Victoria's time, wouldn't it? A couple of hundred years.
I think you can go, most people, if you can get to those records, because they're not available to the public in so much as, they're not easily available to the public.
They're easily available, but they cost you money. You have to pay for them.
Right.
And this is the point. They cost money. So that, when something's happening, it's going to cost you money. It depends upon how desperate you are to find your family tree. You might think to yourself, well, I've heard it in a rumour that I am related to, Henry Tudor. So I could be the King of England. Well, the short answer is you can't be the King of England because all those ancient royal lines were cancelled out by the Bill of Rights of 1689 when they changed the royal line to include William of Orange.
That's right, because you had the Georges, which is the Hanoverian period, isn't it?
But you had the Georges, but then you see they're all all, I mean, Queen Elizabeth II, you can trace her ancestry back, right the way back to Edward Ethelred the Unready, who was an Anglo-Saxon king. And everybody says, oh, you know, she's German. She's not, she's English.
But where does that Prince Albert come into this, though?
Well, Prince Albert was German.
Yeah. Well,
Prince Albert was German, but because he was married to the Queen of England, her children are English, because there is an exception. Right. For you know, because when we have kings, right, they're given what they call a prerogative. A prerogative is rights above and beyond those of the normal subject. Because if they weren't above and beyond the rights of the normal subject, if all of the subjects had all of the royal rights, so basically, they give the kings extra rights over and above us in order that they can be kings and do the job. But the one requirement on a king is that he cannot use the royal prerogative to cause us any harm. Right. Now what's happened is that the House of Commons have stolen the royal prerogative, because they've been on a power grab since the day they were invited into the Parliament in 1297. They've been on a power grab. In 1420 they got the right to initiate all legislation. In 1677 the House of Lords accepted they wouldn't amend the money bill. And in 1911, the House of Commons prevented the House of Lords rejecting a bill. They could only hold it up. So basically,
they're the exception. So the royal family.
Yeah, they're
an exception to the case of the Denizen, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
But anyway, so basically, the royal family are treated differently to the rest of us. But as I say, the restriction is that the king can do whatever he wants to do under prerogative, as long as it has a beneficial effect on us. If it harms even one of us, it is illegal.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that you know, I've always thought in people. I think there are exceptions to the rule here, but you start to get into psychology and psychopaths.
Well, the problem is, if you look at all of the stuff that's on the internet, which is anti-Queen, right?
I really, with the Queen, she's got the best, the royal family, the man, as I see it, have got the biggest opportunity they've had in centuries.
Well, they have, except for the fact that the Queen doesn't believe she has the authority.
Well, if she had the people behind her, Albert.
Exactly, and I'm told by a man called John Guriel, who's a personal friend of the Queen's, and in fact the royal family generally, and his best mate was actually Prince Charles, that the Queen actually hates what's going on in this country with a vengeance, doesn't think she has any authority to deal with it. If the people went into open rebellion against the government, the Queen would come down on the side of the people.
Well, I think that's a possibility. That's a possibility, because I think if you talk to the average guy in the street, you've talked to him many times, been the t-shirt worn several times. You know, they are really, apart from some that just haven't got time and they need to look up. You know, nobody looks up anymore because they've got no time, you know, by their own admission, to even look up to smell the coffee, what's going on. But, you know, I think if the Queen gave a signal, I mean, look, I mean, she can still fish, you know, fill London with supporters on a celebration day of Jubilees and things like as we've seen recently. Now, she's got to let the people know that she would be behind them. So
yeah, but you see, how does she do that? How does she do that?
She's not allowed to speak, is she?
She could, couldn't she? She could get the BBC and say, send me a camera crew to Buckingham Palace, I want to give an interview.
Exactly.
And the BBC send them a camera crew, and then the Queen does the interview and says, look, I'm a prisoner in Buckingham Palace, I need rescuing by my people, I want to take the country back, I want to bring us out of Europe, I want to start rebuilding this country for us and for my people, right? I want to deal with Islam in my country, yeah? I want to do all of these things, and I want to take back into public ownership all of the things that the government has stolen. Then everybody would agree with all of that, every last bit of that.
They've got to get Scammerman's approval, though, Albert.
What?
She's got to get, you know, Scammerman's approval.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Would she get the BBC to air it? And the short answer is no, because the government will refuse permission to the BBC to put it out. Now, the BBC cameraman might say, well, fuck the government, this is my Queen talking, I'm just going to push this out. And if he's got a remote way of doing that, i.e. they've got a live feed to a satellite or something, then in fact he could override everybody, couldn't he?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, it's not likely to happen like that.
Well, if the Queen is listening, she knows where to go.
I tell you what, we'll invite her on our Axiom Curb chat.
Well, why don't you do that? Why don't you say that we're running a little radio show here, Your Majesty? Would you like to come on the internet radio?
Well, you never know. You never know.
I work on the principle: if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they have the royals through whatever people think, she can wipe that clean in an instant.
Even if the Queen herself, or if say you've got Prince Harry on there, even if they don't make a comment at all,
no,
at least they are going to listen to what we are saying.
Well, yeah, the people though are so downtrodden, Albert, and so dumbed down that they lack the confidence in themselves. A lot of people lack the confidence in themselves to stand up to a TV licensing man at the door who's threatening to, you know, this is ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. And a lot of it's through lack of education. You know, the man on the street really doesn't know where he stands. And he needs...
Well, people have not been taught the law of this country in schools since I was at school. Now, I left school in 1960. When I was 12 years of age, we were all paraded into the hallway in school. All the children of 12 were brought out to the front, and we all took an oath of allegiance to the Queen. And the law of this country says that at 12, everybody in this country has to take an oath of allegiance to the Queen. That's what the law says. How many people have actually done it? It's not done in any school today, I'll guarantee it.
Oh no.
It hasn't been done in any school, I'll guarantee, since after I left school.
I can't actually remember taking an oath, but I mean, I left school in the mid-70s.
Yeah, well, I left in 1960. When I was 12, I left at 16. 4 years before that, we went out into the main hallway in the school, where we held our morning receptions and that little church service and all the rest of it. And we went out there, and we were then all hauled out the front. Everybody who was 12 that year were hauled out the front, and you took the oath. And the headmaster read it off a card, and you repeated the words after the headmaster, and there was a Bible there, and the school priest was there, the school vicar was there, and it was all done properly on the Bible as a proper given oath. And we all took that oath of loyalty to the Crown when we were 12, but it's not done, although the law has never been changed about it being done. They can't change the law about it being done. It has to be done.
Well, they conveniently leave it out of curriculums. Things like
Well, that's the point, isn't it? They conveniently leave things out.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, I think that, you know, people are so downtrodden and dumbed down that they got to get something. There's got to be a spark there. There's got to be something from somebody in authority, and, you know, from what you say, that you've heard from the Queen and how she feels about the country, and everything like that. It's a great opportunity to put things right. But she's got I feel, Albert, that, like you say, it doesn't have to be BBC cameras and all this business, because she ain't going to get that anyway, like you say.
No.
If that's the case. But just a sign, it only has to be a subtle sign. It doesn't have to be, you know.
Well, let's be fair. If the Queen called the colonel commanding whichever guards regiment is guarding her at the time in, to talk to her, and she said to him, I want you to turn out the guard, I want Buckingham Palace completely defended because I am breaking out of jail, and I want you to send people along to arrest the Prime Minister, not Parliament, because she can't do Parliament, but what she could do is say, I want the Prime Minister, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Home Secretary and various government officers arrested and brought to her. And then she could sack the lot of them and just say to them, you're sacked. Doesn't even have to put them on trial for anything, just get them there and say, right, you are no longer my Prime Minister, you're no longer my Home Secretary, bosh, bosh, bosh. And it's all done and dusted then, isn't it?
Yep.
And we've got nobody leading government, and we've got to have an election. So that leaves the country being run by the Queen and her advisors, and she can then select her own advisors rather than ones that government have given her all the time.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting, Albert, aren't we, JJ?
Yeah, definitely. Will it be whose job will it be? Will it be Charles? Will it be Williams? Who do you think it'll fall on? Do we have to wait for George?
Well, you mean after the Queen dies?
Yeah.
It can only be Charles. Because you see, people are asking the Queen to actually bypass Charles and go straight to William. But in fact, the crown is not in the gift of the Queen. The crown is part hereditary and part elected. But the Queen doesn't have any say in who takes over the crown. No say whatsoever. In fact,
Charles would have to abdicate, wouldn't he?
Charles would have to abdicate or say he doesn't want the crown. Yeah. Or we could say, well, we don't actually want Charles. Yeah? In fact, we could say we don't actually want any of the family Windsor at all, and we are going to look around and find a completely new royal household.
Well, as like they've done with James II.
With what?
Like they've done with James II?
Yeah. But I mean, with James II, it wasn't entirely completely new household, because Queen Mary was James's daughter.
Of course, yeah.
And you know, the Electress Sophia of Hanover was actually James's granddaughter. She was Charles II's granddaughter, I think. Right? So it was still all Stuart. But the Electress Sophia died before she inherited the crown, so it went to her son George, who didn't speak any English. And that's when it all started going seriously tits up. Because up until Queen Anne died in 1714, our kings and queens attended Parliament on a regular basis, and in fact it wasn't a Parliament if they weren't there, and in fact they also attended cabinet meetings and Privy Council meetings. But because George I didn't speak any English at all, only German and a bit of Latin, he didn't bother going to any of them. No. So when George II came to the throne, the government said, well, you can't come to any of them. And George II complained all his life that his ministers were kings in his kingdom, because they'd actually usurped the royal authority. George III, who everybody thinks was Mad Farmer George, actually was very far from being mad, and actually an extremely good and very popular king. But George III had a 20-year running battle with the House of Commons as to where sovereignty lay, with him as the anointed King of England, or with the House of Commons as the elected House. And after an impassioned speech by Lord Chatham, in which he talked about whether it was better to have one dictator dictating what was going on, or 350, which was the number of member of parliaments we had at the time, 350 dictators in the place. There was a vote taken in the Parliament, and the King won the vote, that sovereignty lay with the King. Now, Parliament tell you that sovereignty is theirs and not the King's, because they are the elected chamber. But there's never been a vote to reverse the original vote. So this Parliament are lying to us again, and it's the House of Commons who are lying to us. Time after time after time, the House of Commons lie to us.
Apart from Mr. Skinner.
Apart from Mr. Skinner.
What do you think of Michael Meacher?
I don't know a lot about him. I mean, I don't waste my time with politicians, because I might hang a lot of them anyway.
You're like me. Just one or two people that I've seen. I saw something on Facebook the other day, and it was debating who should make money.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw a bit. I watched a little bit of it, and the guy who started the speech about it and brought it up sounded quite sensible, and you know, all of what people who were waking up to the fact that, hang on a minute, this monetary system, I smell a rat, you know, this isn't. And when a few years ago, a few people put it out there that, you know, you go to a bank and you sign an agreement, you're actually making the money, and they went, that's a load of bullshit, it's a conspiracy theory, it's rubbish, it's total crap. Now they openly admit it. They openly admit it now, and he admitted it in the House of Commons the other day. That basically, you go to the bank, you say you want 30 grand, right? You create that, because then they put it on the ledger in a deposit for you, and they lend you back your own money at interest. What a scam! What a scam! And the banks, it's not just the Bank of England quantitative easing to the government, it's just ordinary high street banks like Barclays, HSBC. They've been making the currency. They've been creating money, and it's money out of debt. Basically, you know, when somebody said, well, you create your own money when you go to get a loan, because they just put it in the deposit side and lend you back your own money at interest. And people said, that's conspiracy theory. Well, now they've come out and they had a debate in Parliament the day before yesterday, I think it was, wasn't it, Peter? I think.
Yeah.
And they're openly admitting it. That's how the system is. It's crazy. But Albert, it was a conspiracy theory.
Well, you see, you know, people talk to me about conspiracy theory, and some of it is conspiracy theory, and there's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of rubbish conspiracy theory out there. But what I refer to when they say to me about what I'm doing, and they say to me, oh, of course, this is all conspiracy theory, I said, no, it's conspiracy fact. Yeah. I have evidence that other people committed a conspiracy to actually commit high treason, for which I want to hang them.
And I'm just just, I can understand the look, I'm chuckling at the look on their face when you say that. That's what I'm chuckling at.
Well, yeah, I mean, I tell them straight. I mean, Douglas Hurd hates me with a vengeance because he lives in Oxfordshire and so do I. And he regularly goes to these pro-European Union meetings where they have them. And I invariably go there and ambush it. And he hates me with an absolute vengeance because he can't answer any of the questions I ask him. And I openly, in front of a room of 200 or 300 people, I openly accuse him of treason. And he actually can't answer it.
Well, you're not. I can understand why he doesn't take too kindly with that.
No.
You know. I can understand that. Yeah.
No, I tell him. I said, you know, Mr. Hurd, I'm coming to hang you. You know, I'm going to hang you, Mr. Hurd. You're going to hang, and it's going to be me that does it.
I think more of us need to do that, Albert. Yeah.
Well, we do. In fact, I went to a meeting in Tame, where there were about 300 or 400 people there for one of these meetings, and I stood up and started talking about treason. Now, the only people in the place, apart from me and my mate that I went with, everybody else was pro-European. They all thought European movement was a good idea and we should be in Europe. By the time I'd finished talking to them about treason, a good 2/3 of the others thought we should take Douglas Hurd out and hang him.
You obviously didn't, but it's still there, isn't it? Although there's talk of this Tony Blair repealing it. Or
no, he didn't. Tony Blair repealed 3 treason laws, 2 of which are fairly obscure. The 1796 treason law for Irish women, whatever that's supposed to be about, 1795 treason law for women, and the 1795 Treason Act. Now, the 1795 Treason Act was quite an important act because it made it an offence of treason to restrain the Queen. Why would you repeal a law that prevents you from restraining the Queen unless you intend to restrain the Queen? You know, it doesn't matter because it's covered under the 1351 Treason Act. And I've prevented, little old me, prevented any more treason acts ever being repealed.
What's your thoughts on Tony Blair's latest Legacy Award?
Well, my thought on Tony Blair generally is frankly that I think that we should hang, draw and quarter the bastard. And I think we should send his remains to the Middle East to be buried in the sand because they would absolutely disgrace London Bridge or the Tower of London.
Yeah.
So what about these chaps that are trying to want to, you know, get him into The Hague? I mean, that's kind of doing him a favour in that respect, isn't it? Really. So, you know, what do you feel about their attempts? So they're obviously not going to achieve it, but I've entertained a thought here, Albert, if you wouldn't mind. If terrorism, okay, all this terrorism that's going around is you know 100% real, okay, I'm not saying it's not. How come he's still alive?
What, Tony Blair?
Yeah.
Well,
and George Bush.
Well, because they are protected, aren't they? They are very well protected. You and I are still paying for full security teams everywhere Tony Blair goes. Tony Blair goes on holiday to Mauritius. We pay for a group of armed police officers to go to Mauritius with him. Plus the fact there will already be MI6 operators out there making sure that nobody can get near it.
Is that well protected, yeah?
Yeah, he's as well protected today as he was when he was Prime Minister.
Disgraceful.
Well, of course it is. Of course it is.
I mean,
but then you see Douglas Hurd he was a cabinet minister, and he lives in a big mansion house out in Oxfordshire here. I've been to his house, not into it, been outside it, and should really go back and stick bloody leaflets all over it, so hang the bastard, shouldn't we really? But in his house himself, he is surrounded by his own personal police force. And when I upset him at his meetings, I'm standing up there, and there are people standing around the walls who I know bloody well are armed police officers, you know.
Well, what's your feelings against these particular police officers?
Well, my personal feeling against police officers is that they should do the job we pay them for. That is to uphold the law. And they have, you know, the job they're tasked with is to protect her. Say, for example, the job they're tasked with is to protect Tony Blair or Douglas Hurd. But if in fact during the process somebody like me comes along and then produces hard evidence that Douglas Hurd has committed treason, which I have done, then those police officers should really slip into policeman mode, and they should arrest Douglas Hurd, and they should interview him under caution with a view to prosecuting him for treason.
So in the least, they're, you know, you could actually charge them with neglect of duty. Yeah?
Well, yeah, except for the fact they're going to say no, their specific duty is to protect him, not arrest him. But you see, they've got a different perspective, haven't they? Because they're told their job is to keep these people out of trouble and keep them alive. It's not to uphold the law as far as they're concerned. They are there to keep that person out of trouble and alive and well.
So how can you hold these police officers to account then?
Yeah.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's a difficult one to try and...
Well,
you know.
it's really difficult because they're only obeying the orders of their senior officers. Now,
yeah, but we could
say the Nuremberg defence doesn't work.
Yes, exactly, as I was going to say.
Yeah, so the Nuremberg defence doesn't work. So, you know, they are personally responsible for their own actions. So,
yes, exactly. But of course, at the moment, you've got to get through to the IPCC. You've got to get. How can you, when you've got police looking after police and parliamentary committees looking after parliamentary people, they're pretty untouchable, Albert, aren't they? In that respect.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to make, even though you've got the evidence, you can go bang on the table. How do you get the judiciary to do their job properly?
Well, I think it's not a question of judiciary, it's a question of the jury. And I think in any treason trial, we have to have a jury made up exclusively of people indigenous to these islands. No good having people there who come from bloody India or Ceylon or Africa or whatever, just because they're naturalised. No good in that at all. In fact, I think when you come to this country and you get naturalised, I think that should allow you to buy and sell property, inherit and leave property, get a job, work, bring up your family and do all the rest of it. What I don't think it should allow you to do is vote in any elections. What I don't think it should allow you to do is have any say in how the country is run. And I think this is why the country is in the shit it's in now, because we've allowed so many foreigners into positions where they get say.
It's in mega shit, from the top all the way down, unfortunately.
Well, if you look at the top of them, they're not English. They're not English. Cameron is an Ashkenazi Jew. He said he's proud of his Ashkenazi roots. His grandfather and grandmother were Ashkenazi Jews. So how is Cameron English or Scottish? He's not. He's fucking Ashkenazi Jew. which means he's sort of Russianish.
Yeah, Khazars, isn't it?
It's what?
Khazars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure you don't even need to look at that. All you've got to look into the donations of all the three main parties, or four main parties, should we say now, and every one of them are friends of Israel.
Yeah, well, of course they are. Of course they are. And if you look at the things that Farage is doing, Farage is pretty much in agreement with the Tory party, which is pretty much in agreement with the Liberal Party and the Labour Party over all the foreign stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what we have to do is we have to take the country back, put these bastards on trial, hang them by the hundred, and publicly hang them by the hundred, publicly out in the open, and say, you know, this is what we are now doing in this country. We are sending a message to the world. We will not be fucked over. So we do that. We then take the country back. We stop paying money to Europe. We stop paying out foreign aid. And we use that money to rebuild the infrastructure and the armed forces of this country. And we tell our farmers, fuck the shape of the carrot, just grow carrots. We want to eat them, not bloody, you know, look at them. You know.
Yeah, well, that's something that you know, the grassroots. I'm pleased to see, even around my area, people are busy in their allotments, and it's good to see that. You know, people are starting to do their own thing, Albert.
Yeah.
They're doing their own bloody thing, mate, because they can't rely on government or anything like that. They want to close allotments down, and they have done quite, you know, even the basic side of things, because it's absolute, this cabal of supermarket chain, or shall we say it's the one chain, really, if you look behind the fancy names of all that. It's like utilities companies, they've got all these bloody different names, but if you do a little bit of work, you'll find they all go back to one big fat cat, don't they, you know? So
well, this is the point. This is the point.
You know, I think it does start with a man on the street, and yeah, I think eventually, Albert, if it carries on much more like it is, it's the only way you're going to be able to bloody feed yourself.
Yeah.
But that's sad. That's extremely sad. Yeah, we need a sign, don't we? You know, I think if people did get that at this present moment in time, I think you would, as Henry Ford said, see a revolution by the morning.
Well, I think that's probably correct, and you know, and I think that we need to wake people up. Problem is, how do we wake them up? The mainstream media won't publish anything that we want published.
No,
they won't touch it.
It's all got to be alternative media and social networking.
And the people that we need to wake up, they're not on the alternative media. They're actually watching fucking Coronation Street and EastEnders. You know, X Factor. I mean, that's the problem. That is the problem.
They don't realise how important they are, do they? These people.
You see, it was a very good idea put forward that a bloke who actually is a record producer was going to lay on a concert where he was going to get one good group that people would go to see, and a series of smaller groups that are trying to make their way, and they would put on a concert. But between the groups, as one group finished their act, before they went on, somebody would go out on stage, somebody like me, and we would talk to the audience about treason, or we would talk to the audience about what's going on with the banks. We would talk to the audience about what's going on with chemtrails. There's a series of different speakers going out. So the people have actually gone there to actually watch the pop groups. They're actually getting an education at the same time. And you try and wake them up, but it never came to fruition.
Well, you'd need an event, whether they would do it, because unfortunately, one of the biggest music festivals in the UK, which has been kind of usurped by the pop, I mean, they're known as the Illuminati world, but just take it for what it is, tongue-in-cheek, yeah, right, it's Glastonbury.
Yeah.
The Glastonbury Festival would be a fantastic place during, because you know you get all these international artists that do go. But Glastonbury, if you've never been there, Albert, I'm not sure. Have you been there?
Well, I've been to the town of Glastonbury and I've been to Glastonbury Abbey, but I've not been to the festival.
Well, the festival, it's been going a long time, and I can't remember the name of the farmer, but anyway, it doesn't matter. He's always been a goodish egg, yeah? I think so anyway. I think so anyway, because it's got a show like that. And he's done it for years and years. Now, even today, if you was to go there next year, it's not about the pyramid stage, actually named, I think. Right, it's not about the pyramid stage and, you know, an international star like Dolly Parton headlining that. That's only a small part of it. If you go and walk around there, there's loads of tents with performing artists doing normal things. So there's a lot of, and Glastonbury, that was what it was all about. It wasn't about international pop artists, it was about creative people doing creative things. Now, that can be from juggling, dancing, it didn't matter what it was, but most of it was musically orientated, right? And I feel that it has lost that side of it the last decade or so. It's become commercialised and pop musicalised and all the big fat cats, and you know, if the star is slightly falling off the edge, getting on the bin, he can redeem his career. It's a bit, in a way, it's not like comparing the celebrity thing, like get me out here, but you notice they're mostly failed personalities. They go on there and they get another go at their, you know, whatever they are. But somewhere like that, if you could convince the guy who runs it if he became like us, or like people that are waking up, should we say, now that would be the best festival I could think where you could do something like you're saying, because that's not only known just nationally.
Well, it would be good because it also goes out over the mainstream media.
Yes, exactly what I was going to say. Absolutely. And it's huge. It's a huge international thing because of people throughout the world, you know, it's broadcast live throughout the world or whatever like that. Now, whether that it would have to be done, it would have to be done in a way, it would be kept sort of like kindly secret, which would be hard to do, because I think the powers that be would try and snuff it out. You know, maybe cancel the festival. Do you remember the thing, they call it the Battle of the Beanfield in the 80s? Do you remember the New Age travellers wanted to go to the Stone Age Festival? You know what happened there, don't you, Albert?
No, not really. I've never been into pop festivals and stuff like that.
Well, you should know what, it was about 84, 85. Now the government said it's cancelled. And it was a convoy of 150 wagons of New Age travellers. You know, people who just you would call them society dropouts, or they used to be hippies. You know, from that sort of area. Yeah. But it was the mid-80s, right? Now,
I actually quite like the hippies.
Well, yeah, because you know they just want to do what they do. But the fact of the Battle of the Beanfield was they said it's cancelled. The government said it's cancelled. It's Thatcher. Thatcher was there. Yeah. She said it's cancelled, you're not going there. So the police organised a roadblock and they diverted them into a bean field. 150 vehicles, quite a lot of people. Now, if you want to go, it's on YouTube, check it out sometime. And the way the police acted was disgraceful. Totally disgraceful. There was no need for it. They smashed all the windows of these people and these coaches who had women and kids in there, that's all. And these guys are, what have we done? We're not trying to do anything, we've not broken any laws. And it was because of Thatcher and what she was like and whatever you're a fan of her or not, I don't know. But that particular thing, right? And it was all because a group of just New Age travellers, call them what you like, just wanted to live their life peacefully and be left alone. They didn't break any civil laws, they made sure they lived on lands and with farmers' permission, and they never trespassed. So it was all done above board, that particular movement.
Yeah.
They just wanted to live a normal life, Albert, and they didn't break no laws, they didn't harm anybody, but that was not going to be allowed. And that actual Battle of the Beanfield was used, right, and those travelling people, all the blame was put on them. It wasn't the police, it wasn't Margaret Thatcher, just like the miners and all the rest of it. It depends on how you feel about that, that's another thing. But, you know, I think that would be the danger to such an event, I'm afraid. But I don't know, but so that would be absolutely, yeah, that would get the message out, no doubt. If it could.
You know, I used to work with a policewoman who was very, very flower power. Very, very flower power. When she wasn't in uniform, she dressed like a hippie girl, and I loved the fashion. She was really long hair right down to her waist and everything. She was a lovely, lovely, sweet girl.
Yeah.
And what I used to like about her was when you walked down the street with her, she knew the name of every type of flower, of every type of grass, of every tree. Every cat and dog would come to her for miles, and if she stopped to talk to somebody, the bloody birds would fly into the tree next to her and start singing. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was absolutely wonderful. The police actually didn't like her.
Oh.
I was the only one that was happy to go out with her. Everybody else used to try and avoid her. But I loved the girl, and her regular job, her daytime job, was as an undercover investigator for Customs and Excise.
Oh.
And the last time I saw her was in Harlesden Police Station as a customs officer, where she was totally different to the way I'd known her. She was extraordinarily professional in what she was doing, exceptionally professional. And one of the people there said that she'd infiltrated a Yardie drug gang, and she'd been working inside the Yardie drug gang for 3 months on her own.
Right.
And I mean, it doesn't get more risky than that, does it?
Not really, no.
And she gave out the information that they were going to raid the place, she was still with the drug gang. And when they came through the door, this 6'6" West Indian Yardie grabbed an Uzi machine gun and was about to actually shoot the police and the customs as they came through the door. And the customs man said to me, he said he'd never seen anything like it, because she wasn't particularly big girl. She was about 5'6", but she was very slim build and, you know, like the hippie girls were, really.
Yeah.
And he said, you've never seen anything like it. He said he didn't see her moving. The next thing you knew, the Yardie drug van with a machine gun was flat on his face on the floor. She had her foot in the side of his neck, and his machine gun was pointing at his head, and she said, move and you're dead.
Like Tomb Raider.
You know.
Yeah, Laura, isn't it? Laura.
Yeah. Laura Croft.
And you know, but she was such a wonderful girl to be with, you know, and so sweet. And all the animals and all the kids gravitated to her. I've never seen anything like it in my life, but all of them gravitated to her. You know.
You know, I found all my sisters, not too many of my brothers, but most of my sisters were hippies in the 60s. And I couldn't see no harm in the movement. You know, I couldn't see the problem with it, you know. I still don't see what the problem is with it. But I guess I can see the problem on the people that, you know, want to run the system how they want for their own benefit. Yeah, of course. It's, you know, I think that's what you're seeing now personally, but yeah, I know exactly what you mean, Albert, in the description. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, listen, I'll have a word. I'll see if I can get in touch with the farmer. I can't remember his name. He's got a quite a nice chap. I can't remember his name. But that would be that would do it, something like that.
Yeah.
Like that. Because it's you're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the weekend. I mean, they all stay for the whole weekend, nobody leaves, apart from perhaps locals or whatever, but, yeah.
More than enough time.
Anyway, chaps, listen, I'm going to go and get myself a cup of tea and something to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries, Albert. Thanks for the update.
Alright?
Yeah.
Okay, Albert.
Alright.
Time.
That's alright. Good night. Good night.
Good night, Albert.
Good night.
Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.